Thank you so much. So it was wonderful to just get a picture of what is the opportunity from both these large schemes. It was wonderful to see how energy and water nexus also creates much more multi-skilled jobs, and then the nuance of women's participation being brought into the whole need for skills. I like specifically what Nidhi called skill is a power. So it's not knowledge or information. Now we are moving to skill as a superpower. We will now have the second panel discussion on charting the future, sustaining water and livelihoods in rural India. This panel will explore models to sustain the institutions, the green jobs, convergence with other schemes which have an immediate bearing with water security. I would like to invite the panel members, Mr. Ashok Goel, Commissioner SBR, DOWR, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation. He's uniquely positioned to talk about the convergence of agri, water and other schemes in PMKSY and how they help in renovation of water bodies. I would also like to invite Dr. Marcela De Souza, Director, WOTR, Center for Resilient Studies, and the former Executive Director of Watershed Organization Trust. She brings rich insights on water stewardship, green livelihoods from the ecosystem-based adaptation approach to sustainable development. Ms. Meena Das Mohapatra, General Manager and State Head, Foundation for Ecological Security. Her expertise on governance of forests and water, and with a focus specifically on institutions, gender justice, and poverty. Mr. Govardhan R. Kulkarni, ex-chairman, Mahatma Jyotirao Phule Water User Association, Nasik. He's a distinguished expert in participatory irrigation management, recognized for his work on equitable distribution of water and in efficient canal water usage through water user associations. The panel will be moderated by Mr. Shilp Verma, Senior Researcher at International Water Management Institute. He is famous for his water, energy, food policies and is acknowledged for his work on water, energy, food, rural livelihoods domain. Please. Okay, a small announcement while the panel gets started. After 10 minutes, you could just collect your snacks from outside and come back inside. At the back. Yes. It's inside the room, just at the back.
Okay, shall we start? Okay. I understand from the brief that's available on everybody's desk. Our focus is going to be on agriculture, and we are very fortunate to have 4 panelists who have a lot of experience in this field. I'm going to briefly talk about each of the panelists as they are listed here. Ashok ji is obviously managing PMKSY, which is India's flagship irrigation expansion and development program. It has the objective of delivering Har Khet Ko Pani and has several components, including improving water use efficiency, per drop more crop, as our Prime Minister likes to say. We have Dr. Marcela, who has a lot of experience through the work of water. They are the pioneers and one of the stalwarts in the watershed management domain in India. We have Meena ji from FES. They have a lot of work in water use in agriculture and agriculture-related livelihoods. And then finally, we have Mr. Govardhan, who is coming with experience from the field of managing a water user association. Now, the reason why we want to focus on agriculture is, one is because while we can talk a lot about water and water-related livelihoods, agriculture is still the largest livelihood for people in rural areas. It might be, for most people, not the preferred profession, but it is the default profession for almost everyone in rural areas. This note here says that agriculture is India's largest consumer of groundwater, but it's also by far the largest consumer of water. 90% of freshwater use is in agriculture. And 2 things that I was very happy to hear about in the session so far was the strong and repeated focus on groundwater and the importance of managing groundwater better because of its centrality to not only our agriculture, but also our drinking water domain. We have the world's largest groundwater economy, but it's more than just, I think somebody mentioned we use more groundwater than China and USA combined. That is true. But the reason why our groundwater management is much more complex is because we have so many millions of small distributed users. Each farmer with an average land holding of less than a hectare is a small groundwater user. We have about 21 or 22 million wells and tube wells spread all over the country. No other country in the world has so many structures pumping so much groundwater. And I'm also very happy that the other thing mentioned was energy, and specifically renewable energy. And the reason for that is that we are the world's leader in deploying renewable energy, specifically solar energy in agriculture. About 93% of the world's capacity deployed, solar energy capacity deployed for use in agriculture, is currently in India. And that is only kind of has gone into solarizing about 400,000 or 500,000 irrigation pumps. But we have a potential of solarizing 22 million irrigation wells. And that alone, out of the 450 gigawatt national target of 2030, if we could solarize irrigation, that itself would be between 150 to 200 gigawatt. So that's the kind of contribution that solarizing agriculture can make. All of this, whether it is PMKSY's objective of expanding irrigation or our country's objective of solarizing our agriculture sector, all of this will create new jobs. In drilling new wells, in digging new wells, in maintaining those wells and irrigation infrastructure, as well as in supplying and maintaining irrigation infrastructure which is based on renewable energy. There's a lot that is happening. I also heard stories of well drillers, tube well drillers from Andhra Pradesh going and drilling wells in Africa. And they are basically beating European drillers on price, and we are able to do it at much lower cost. So they are not only utilizing opportunities in India, where we are doing about 1 million wells every year, new wells, but they're also going to sub-Saharan Africa and now taking their skills there. So that's the kind of opportunities we have. Now, the way I want to basically run this session is we will invite each of the panelists to first reflect on the topic of the session based on their experiences and their specific context. And then in the second round, we'll do some questions specific to the panelists. So can I start with Dr. Marcella to talk about, please go ahead.
Okay. So I come from the perspective of working in the semi-arid rain shadow areas, rain-dependent areas. And as you all know, we have about 69% of our country that is arid, semi-arid, subhumid, rain-dependent. So this is a major area that we have to see how we can have sustainable livelihoods from our land and water resources. And yes, with 55% of our population being agriculturists. I'll just give you a short gist of an impact assessment that we did 5 years after we left a project. It was implemented, a holistic approach implemented in 25 villages, having 3 different typologies: the hilly area, the upper catchment in the rain shadow, and the rivulet within. What did we see after a holistic climate change adaptation approach was implemented? It was a study of over 10 years, 5 years post-project implementation. And the key thing what we found was, because it was done in a holistic way, I'll explain that later, we had improvement in the ecosystem services in terms of the provisioning services which we all quickly know, the food, the water, the livelihoods through agriculture had improved tremendously. I'm not going to, and even ecotourism began. I'm not going to talk about the regulatory and the other services. We then saw that there is an improvement in the ecosystem health. we assessed was the tree cover improved and how much. And it was surprising that even in the rain shadow in Maharashtra, that the tree cover had improved. The biodiversity had improved. Erosion control had improved. Water levels in the wells, the surface water and subsurface water had improved. And interestingly, a very recent study we saw was the land surface temperature, comparing it with the pre-project and in April 2021, we found that the land surface temperature for large areas of these watersheds were about 3 degrees less than earlier. So this had given us an impact on what were the impact on the health of the ecosystem. And then we looked also at the economic returns. We had control villages, and we saw that in all the 3 sites, the hilly area, which is more tribal, Western Ghats, I'll talk more about the one in the semi-arid upper catchment of the rain shadow area, where the economic returns were 4 times more as compared to other villages, control villages, where they had other normal interventions taking place. Some even had a dam, and yet the economic returns were 4 times more. So this was for us a tremendous experience because it was 5 years after we left the project. I want to share with you what exactly did we do and how did we get these impacts. The first thing we realized was we needed to do a systemic approach, a holistic land and water management approach. But we talk about land and water as a resource to be exploited. We realized we needed to look at it as an ecosystem because we are a part of the ecosystem and we need to protect it in that way. So we looked at the forests, the drylands, the upper catchments, the rivulet areas, etc. And we looked at treating this entire area as it should be. And that is why we could see the impacts we get. So we looked at what the ICFRE calls the Sustainable Land and Ecosystems Management approach is what we have been doing. And as all of you know, the watersheds. But once you do this treatment, within a very short while after the treatment, people see that there's greater water availability and potential for agriculture. So after the treatment, we realized we needed to get into water management and agriculture productivity. Because it's very easy to say, well, there's water. Everybody started exploiting water and drilling bore wells after the project period. We feel very good about it when a lot of bore wells are dug. But what really is happening to the groundwater is the big issue. And, well, that's an invisible and therefore an infinite source, as we understand. But that's when we saw that we needed to take it from a stewardship approach. So when we have the watershed development done with the whole community, all households participating in it, and setting up their committee with a very balanced representation, represented proportionately according to all categories of households, with about 40 to 50% of them being women in the watershed, in the village development committee, and they work under the Gram Panchayat. They report to the Gram Panchayat. So once that was done, then the groundwater became a very good opportunity to see it as a common pooled resource. So here we took the approach of water stewardship rather than just water resource management. A stewardship means that the community takes responsibility, it owns it, it knows it. So we then train the Jal Sevaks and Jal Sevikas who bring in the data, they are capacitated, bring in the data, submitted to the water committee, which is under the Gram Panchayat. So they get informed information, and a whole water budgeting is planned. But prior to water budgeting, it is also an assessment of all the structures that do water harvesting, so that repairs and maintenance are done by the community. They use a lot of the NREGA work opportunities over there for repairs, which is a good opportunity. But the water management goes further. We realized that because in these dryland areas, everybody depends on groundwater, and then we realized the importance of making the aquifers, getting the villages to be informed about what their aquifers are. And very interestingly, we find that an aquifer is not just where each one gets their water source, but sometimes 4 villages, and in another location, 14 villages share an aquifer. Then the question is, whose water is it? Is it because I can drill a well, I can drill a bore well, and therefore the water is mine? That becomes the whole challenge in water management. So what we realized then was bringing the community to own it, to giving them the information as a community and capacitating them so that they take up the water management. We have an aquifer management committee that has been set up by the people, by the group of villages, and now and again they come and inform us, how to do, what to do things. How do they make plans for years when there's less rainfall, in years of drought, in years of good rainfall? So this is the entire management plan that the village takes up, that the watershed committee takes up. But we cannot get them to do water management unless they get good productivity. And together with that comes the whole capacity building for adaptive, sustainable agriculture with diversity and all the methodologies, so that there is a balanced way in which they can go ahead. And in this way that people can take it forward. There's one more point I would like to say. In terms of water management, we realize we promote a lot of the the water management and water saving, extremely important. Not just micro-irrigation, but all the methods of sustaining the soil health, mulching, etc., and bringing groups of farmers together, whether they to bring them together to share the water resource, so that all of them can make their agriculture plan and micro-irrigation together. So they come in groups wherever they are, and that is we find it very beneficial, because these are being sustained even in years of low rainfall.
So just a quick rejoinder to that, to link it with the earlier discussion. I just want to emphasize that a lot of the work that you are talking about that these villagers take up is basically voluntary work. It's not paid work, but it's an investment that should bring returns through their agriculture.
Yeah. The works of the committees are voluntary because they are part of the under the Gram Panchayat, that's voluntary. The Jal Sevaks and Jal Sevikas are trained because we need them to focus on the work, and a Jal Sevak or Jal Sevika takes care of 3 or 4 villages depending on the distances and location, and they have to be very precise in getting the data, informing the community, etc.
So these Jal Sevaks and Sevikas
are paid through the project.
Through the project.
And our concern is, after the project period, how do we keep it going? So we try different means. I don't know. That's a big challenge.
Okay. Great. Ashokji, if you can reflect on the work that is being done as part of PMKSY, and now on how that relates to the discussions here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. PMKSY, as we know, Government of India thinks big. So the investments by Government of India are also big. So PMKSY for the 5-year period of 21 to 26 is about 93,000 crores, which is a huge amount. And this is only for the investment of Government of India, and water being a state subject. An equally huge amount comes from the state governments towards irrigation sector. So a lot of investment is happening in the irrigation sector, And in PMKSY, if you look at it, about 29 crore man days of works will be created for the implementation of project itself, and about 22 lakh farmers will be benefited for this 2021-26 period. So, that kind of implies a huge prosperity in the rural level, and any prosperity in the rural areas then leads to jobs. Apart from that, we are also, another major initiative that our ministry has taken in the recent past is that we wish to double the water use efficiency in irrigation sector. As we know, presently on surface water front, it is hardly about 35-38%, and we now feel that it can be doubled over a staggered period of 2047 to almost double of it. In the current terms, that would mean another irrigation to another 25 to 28 million hectare, which is already irrigated through surface water, because the same water will now irrigate twice the area. That again leads to huge prosperity, because our studies say that with irrigation the crop yield is about 3 to 4 times. So the prosperity is accordingly huge, and that leads to jobs. If we look at the strategies of water use efficiency that we wish to adopt, micro irrigation is of course having a huge responsibility on its shoulders. Presently, we have about 15 million hectare of area under micro irrigation, which can go up to 70 million hectare. So that we want to exhaust fully by 2047. Then we have there is a huge loss in the canals, lined or unlined. Of course, unlined is huge, much bigger loss, but even lined canals as compared to underground pipelines is a loss, because it also leads to unauthorized drawals or drawals by commands which are not actually planned for that project. So we intend to go in a large way to underground pipelines for conveying the irrigation water. Then there is a command area development work, by which we have about a 20% gap between IPC and IPU. The utilization is normally about 20% lesser than the creation, because of the last mile, on-field development works, which can lead to the tail ends not getting water, and maybe the slightly higher lands not getting water. So that is to be addressed to the command area works, by which we can increase the efficiency by 20% or 15%. Then use of treated water, especially in peri-urban areas, by which we will replace the fresh water with the treated water, provided the quality of the treated water matches the requirement of the agriculture. Then there are other measures like Sahi Fasal and precision farming, which will address about 10% of this 100% increase in efficiency. And lastly, we have this metering and pricing. They can be independent also. Metering can be for one's own understanding also, as to how much command is having, what kind of efficiency I am having in my command. It may not necessarily always be linked with pricing. Though wherever the meter comes, people then feel that eventually the pricing part will also get rigid. But not necessarily. Metering can be standalone understanding of the water use efficiency in that particular command. Now, if you look at each of these measures that I have mentioned, we require skilled manpower to address. For example, micro irrigation. It requires higher maintenance because of the clogging that happens because of silt. And then in a command of Sanchor in Rajasthan, which have for the first time seen fresh water in their life, non-salty water through the Narmada Canal of the Sardar Sarovar project. A group of farmers are using same sprinkler system, and there is a village level mechanic who has been trained, who is otherwise doing cycle punctures and those kind of things. So he has that slightly technical bent of mind. So he is being given some 7,000 or 10,000 rupees a month by the group of farmers, and then he shifts that sprinkler equipment to the different fields from time to time. So these are the kind of jobs, plus maintenance of those pipelines, partial replacement from time to time. And apart from that, with micro and all, the crop is also getting changed. So we have more, more opportunity for the extension workers, agriculture extension workers, to take care of the new, maybe slightly commercial or different kind of crops. So all these definitely will lead to much more manpower requirement and employment opportunities in the irrigation sector. But as far as the viability goes, as we have been discussing in the earlier panel also, it has to be a multitasking kind of environment. Single skills may not be viable completely. And in this particular case, the employment has to be through a self-help group. It cannot be individual farmers, even though the farmer may be having a huge land. But the employment has to be by a group of farmers, by the self-help groups or water user associations, whatever they are called. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashokji. I'll come back to you with some more questions, but can we move to Meena ji? Can you share some of FES's experience?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, as the topic, so agriculture, we all know, is a largest sector for promoting rural livelihood, and also, but its potential is not yet fully, I would say, utilized. So FES also believes in, it doesn't see agriculture in isolation, but it sees in a systems approach to agriculture, where all the resource systems are linked together, maybe forest, water, agriculture, all are linked together. So our work in this sector, we have been working with the Department of Agriculture as well as with Livelihood Mission to promote sustainable agricultural practices and water governance. And one of the objectives of this is to build the capacity of, we don't say last mile, but we say first mile field functionaries of the government, which are like Krishi Mitras, who are the agriculture first line functionaries, and of Krishak Sathis, who are the first mile government functionaries of agriculture department. So we are working with them on building their capacities on these sustainable agricultural practices and water governance. Secondly, we are trying to see it from an angle of developing a women-led agriculture system. And thirdly, seeing how it can be institutionalized, because if institutional mechanisms are not there in ground, then all the efforts go in vain. So third thing which we are seeing is the institutional mechanism, and fourthly, community-friendly tools and technology like crop water budgeting or a crop budgeting kind of a thing that we are seeing, and taking it ahead with these frontline field functionaries. So in this whole approach of building capacity, what we have realized that in the whole aspect of capacity building, where the traditional way of capacity building was a long kind of a capacity building, like 3-day, 5-day kind of a capacity building, and frequency was very less, say 2 years or 5 years, once in a while they are being capacitated. But we realized in this whole process that the retention was very low. So what we introduced and worked with both the departments is in building a capacity building framework, where there were short, we said it as low dose high frequency trainings, like small sessions, 1 sessions each, and these frontline functionaries were being trained on each aspect, and then they went to the field, they tried to take it ahead with the farmers, but also included a guided mentoring kind of a system also, where in every 15 days or a month, these field functionaries could come back with their issues, resolve the issues. There was a virtual platform where experts from different departments like Agriculture Department or Livelihood Mission or Krishi Vikas Kendra, all those experts were there. And also there was a platform where peer-to-peer learning could take place. If somebody has the similar issue, they also used to share. So there was a good learning platform for them. So capacity building of low dose high frequency with a guided mentoring, and also these Krishak Sathis and Krishi Mitras, they also took up a demonstration plot, say a small patch where they demonstrated. So this was the kind of approach that we took, and we realized that they started working with a almost like 2 lakh farmers, and they adopted these practices, and also they could discuss in the community regarding when the farmers used to say कि कि ये क्या है, ये क्यों हमारे गांव में तो पानी नहीं है. But then when they used to do this water budgeting exercise and then show कि पानी कहाँ है, कितना है, ठीक है, accessible है या नहीं, that is another issue. But yeah, how much water is there, what kind of crops needs to be taken. There were greater discussions regarding revised crop planning. If there was a deficit in water, then there was a revised crop planning regarding whether to take sugarcane, which is a high water intensity crop, or to take millets, or to take other crops. So that kind of a discussion was possible with this kind of tools and technology. And if we see the Krishi Mitras, who are the extension workers in Orissa Livelihood Mission, so they are mostly 90 to 95% are women. So this low dose, high frequency, when we are saying the small sessions, which were like they could attend and they don't have to come out of the village and stay somewhere else and take the training. They could take it at their home, at their own convenience. It was helping them a lot. So this kind of process that happened with the extension workers. So this is our experience in Orissa.
थैंक यू मीना जी. अभी गोवर्धन जी आपसे पूछेंगे, आपका जो फील्ड का एक्सपीरियंस है वाटर यूजर एसोसिएशन चलाने का, उसमें उसके बारे में थोड़ा बताएंगे, और उसको कैसे हम लिंक करें, कैसे वाटर यूजर एसोसिएशन में भी जिस तरह के काम होते हैं, अभी तो हर जगह WUS वॉलंटरी है, लेकिन उसको अगर आगे लेके जाना है, ज़्यादा जगह तक लेके जाना है, ज़्यादा लोगों तक लेके जाना है, तो कैसे किया जा सकता है? आप उस पर थोड़ा रिफ्लेक्ट करें.
WA की तरफ जाने के पहले मैंने जो आज सुबह से यहाँ पे सुना, उसके बारे में मैं थोड़ा सा एक 5-10 लाइन बोलना चाहूँगा.
बिल्कुल.
पहली बात तो ये कि घर में नल आया है, किचन में पीने का पानी का टैप है, और दरवाजे पे जार वाला आ रहा है. मतलब हम बात कर रहे हैं वो नल को सही रखने के लिए एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन की, और ये दूसरा जो एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन तैयार हो गया है. दूसरी बात यह है कि ढेर सारे गांव शहर ऐसे हैं जहां पीने के लिए पानी 100-250 किलोमीटर से पाइप से लाया जा रहा है, और उसी गांव के नाले वेस्ट वाटर से बह रहे हैं. तो ये जो परिस्थितियाँ है, विपरीत परिस्थितियाँ हैं, इसके ऊपर भी हमको सोचना चाहिए. मतलब ये अब नल को पानी नहीं है, जार वाला पानी रह रहा है, इसका मतलब कहीं तो कहीं पानी है, वेस्ट वाटर बह रहा है, कहीं तो कहीं पानी है. ये इससे ये साबित होता है कि हमारे देश में पानी की कमी नहीं है, उसकी मैनेजमेंट की कमी है. और वो मैनेजमेंट को सही करने के लिए ढेर सारी एम्प्लॉयमेंट उसमें जनरेट होने वाली है. और वुमेंस में पानी के प्रति अवेयरनेस जेंट्स के ज़्यादा होता है. इसलिए मेरे को तो लगता है आगे वाले समय में जितने भी इसमें एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट होगी, उसमें 90% के ऊपर वुमेंस का ही इन्वॉल्वमेंट रहेगा. अब मैं थोड़ा सा WA की तरफ जाऊंगा. हम लोग बात करते हैं देश का GDP बढ़ना चाहिए. तो देश का GDP कब बढ़ेगा? भारत तो कृषि प्रधान देश है. कृषि प्रधान देश है तो GDP में उसका योगदान भी बहुत बड़ा है. तो ये उसका योगदान बढ़ा हुआ योगदान बढ़ाने के लिए उसका एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस बढ़ना चाहिए. और एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस कब बढ़ेगा? जब किसान के पास सही वक्त पे पानी होगा, तब बढ़ेगा. अब क्लाइमेट चेंज हो गया है, आबादी बढ़ रही है तो ज़मीन हिस्सों में बढ़ रही है. ज़मीन हिस्सों में बढ़ रही है तो किसान उसकी ट्रेडिशनल क्रॉप छोड़ के वो कैश क्रॉप की तरफ जा रहा है. कैश क्रॉप की तरफ जा रहा है तो उसकी पानी की ज़रूरत बढ़ रही है. हम बोलते हैं ड्रिप इरिगेशन लगाओ, पानी बच जाएगा. सही है. अब कल परसों मैंने सुना कि इस साल वर्ल्ड का जो ड्रिप का जो टर्नओवर है वो 48,000 लाख तक जाएगा. मतलब इतना पैसा ड्रिप इरिगेशन में खर्चा होगा, इतना ड्रिप इरिगेशन लगेगा. तो पानी कितना बचना चाहिए? अगर पानी ड्रिप से बचता है तो कहीं ना कहीं तो वो बैलेंस दिखना चाहिए ना. किसान के पास दिखना चाहिए, डैम में दिखना चाहिए, ग्राउंड वाटर में दिखना चाहिए, वो दिख नहीं रहा है। तो ये जो कुछ चीज़ें हैं इसके ऊपर हमको थोड़ा सा गौर करना पड़ेगा। अब रही बात वाटर यूज़र एसोसिएशन की, किसान को समय पे पानी आज नहीं मिल रहा है, तो किसान का प्रोडक्शन कब बढ़ेगा? जब उसको समय पे पानी मिलेगा तब। अब क्लाइमेट चेंज की वजह से क्या हो गया है कि बारिश के दिन में फसल को पानी देने की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़नी चाहिए, मगर आज बारिश के दिनों में हम ग्राउंड वाटर से पानी निकालते हैं और फसल को दे रहे हैं। मतलब जिस सीज़न में, जिस दिनों में ग्राउंड वाटर रिचार्ज होना चाहिए, उस सीज़न में हम लोग ग्राउंड वाटर का पानी निकाल रहे हैं। तो ऐसी विपरीत परिस्थिति आ गई है। इसकी वजह से अब पानी कौन सा बचा है? जो तालाबों में, डैम में स्टोर पानी है, उसके ऊपर ही आगे जाके हमारा इरिगेशन चलने वाला है। तो उस पानी को सही इस्तेमाल करना चाहिए। उसका फ्रीक्वेंसी जो है, इस्तेमाल की फ्रीक्वेंसी, इफ़िशियंसी जो है वो बढ़ानी चाहिए। हम अगर देखें, ये डैम, कैनाल, आउटलेट्स, ये सब हो गए हार्डवेयर, कंप्यूटर की भाषा में हम बोलेंगे तो। और वो उसमें पानी को बहाना, उसको सही तरह से किसानों को पहुंचाना, वो चाहे डब्ल्यू के माध्यम से पहुंचाओ या WRD के माध्यम से पहुंचाओ, वो है सॉफ्टवेयर। हमें हार्डवेयर के साथ साथ सॉफ्टवेयर भी काम करना पड़ेगा। अब इसमें जो जॉब इसमें क्रिएट होने वाला है वो बहुत क्रिएट होने वाला है। कुछ जॉब्स ऐसे हैं वो डायरेक्टली क्रिएट होंगे, कुछ इनडायरेक्टली क्रिएट होंगे। अब मैं जिस एरिया से हूँ, वाघाड़ प्रोजेक्ट हमारा नाम है, प्रोजेक्ट का नाम है। नासिक से 50 किलोमीटर की दूरी पर वो डैम है। 10,000 हेक्टर का उसका एरिया है और वाटर अवेलेबिलिटी पर हेक्टर खाली 8 इंच है। 8 इंच पानी में हम लोग अगर फ्लड से इरिगेशन करना चाहेंगे तो 2 ही इरिगेशन हम साल में कर सकते हैं, मगर आज हम लोग साल में 5 इरिगेशन कर रहे हैं, ड्रिप इरिगेशन और कंजर्वेटिव यूज़ ऑफ वाटर। इसकी वजह से हम लोग एक संभव हो रहा है। साथ साथ में मैं और एक आपको चीज़ बताना चाहूँगा। 90 में हम लोगों ने काम शुरू किया था। उस वक्त इस वाघा डैम पे गवर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉयज़, सेक्शनल इंजीनियर के नीचे 40 लोग काम करते थे, और आज रिटायरमेंट होते 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 वो एक भी गवर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉय सेक्शनल इंजीनियर के नीचे नहीं है। जो हमारी वाटर यूज़र एसोसिएशन के ऊपर हम लोगों ने अपेक्स बनाई है, उसके 7 आदमी हम लोगों ने अपॉइंट किए हैं। वो 7 आदमी पूरे 10,000 हेक्टर का इरिगेशन देखते हैं। जहाँ गवर्नमेंट के 40 आदमी काम करते हैं थे, वही काम हमारे आज 7 आदमी काम कर रहे हैं। और उन 7 आदमी को भी गवर्नमेंट को सैलरी देनी नहीं है, वो सैलरी WA दे रही है। अब एक WA के लिए एक सेक्रेटरी का होना जरूरी है, एक पानी बांटने के लिए एक वाटर मास्टर का होना जरूरी है, और एक लेबर, कम से कम एक लेबर WA में होना चाहिए। इस तरह से 3 एम्प्लॉयमेंट एक WA में जनरेट होगी। हमारे 24 WA है, 72 पर्सन्स काम कर रहे हैं। और यही स्ट्रक्चर पूरे भारत में इम्प्लीमेंट कर दिया जाएगा तो कम से कम 1 लाख WAs बनेगी। अब हर WA में 3 लोगों को एम्प्लॉयमेंट मिलेगी। इसके हिसाब से 3 लाख एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट होगी, और उस एम्प्लॉयमेंट को गवर्नमेंट को सैलरी देनी नहीं है। उसकी सैलरी कौन देगा? WA देगा। गवर्नमेंट को खाली क्या करना है, इस WA को एम्पावर करना है, और उसका जो वाटर कोटा है वो उसको तो पहुंचाना है। आज होता क्या है, कुछ महाराष्ट्र में 5-6 जगह है, MP में 2-4 जगह, ऐसे हर स्टेट में 5-6 जगह छोड़े तो ये WS का काम ज़्यादा नहीं दिख रहा है। क्योंकि इसकी वजह ये है, पहली वजह टेल तक पानी जाता नहीं है। जैसे कि साहब ने बोला कि लाइन कैनाल, अनलाइन कैनाल। अब अनलाइन कैनाल में सीपेज लीकेज है, लाइन में कम है, मगर लाइनिंग की भी 5-6 साल के बाद उसकी जो ताकत होती है वो कम होती जा रही है। इसलिए पाइपलाइन नेटवर्क का भी वो सामने आ रहा है। अनुज जी कानवाल आके गए हमारे वाघाड़ पे, अब वो चल रहा है पूरा पाइपलाइन में कन्वर्ट करने का। तो लास्ट तक पानी अगर जाएगा, किसान के खेत में पानी जाएगा, तो किसान WA के प्रति, WRD के प्रति उसके मन में एक विश्वास पैदा होगा कि अब ये WA है इसलिए मेरे पास पानी आ रहा है, और ये बढ़ेगा। ये तो हो गई डायरेक्ट एम्प्लॉयमेंट की मैंने बात बताई। अब इनडायरेक्ट एम्प्लॉयमेंट जो है वो तो बहुत तैयार होता है। मतलब मैं तो बोलता हूँ ये पानी का बूंद है, जहाँ जाता है वहाँ हलचल माना जाता है। आगे वाले सदियों के लिए ये फ्यूल की तरह काम करेगा, और रूरल एरिया के डेवलपमेंट में तो वो करेगा ही करेगा। अब हमारा प्रोजेक्ट में हम जो वाटर यूजर एसोसिएशन नहीं थे, तब हमारे यहाँ का लेबर मुश्किल से साल में 2 महीने का काम करता था। उसके बाद वो तो कहीं और काम पे जाता जाता हम किसान लोग भी नरेगा के काम पे जाते थे। ये 1990 की बात है। और आज सिचुएशन ऐसी है कि वो जो किसान 2 महीने काम करता था, आज तो वो गुजर गया, उसकी सेकंड जनरेशन है, उनको पूरे साल भर का काम मिल गया है। आज के डेट में अंगूर हमारे उधर ज़्यादा है, तो अंगूर में काम करने वाला लेबर हस्बैंड एंड वाइफ दिन भर में कम से कम 1,000 रुपये कमा रहे हैं। हमारी मोबाइल की जो हम खरीदते हैं 10-12 हज़ार के ऊपर हम नहीं जा पाते किसान, मगर उनका मोबाइल 15 तो 20 हज़ार में से होता है। वो हमारे बच्चों के साथ साथ उनके बच्चे भी इंग्लिश स्कूल में पढ़ रहे हैं। मतलब ये जो सब बदलाव आ रहा है, ये पानी की बूंद की वजह से आ रहा है। खाली इतना ही नहीं बदलाव आया, इसकी वजह से ड्रिप इरिगेशन बढ़ता गया, ड्रिप लगाने वाला, उसको मेंटेन करने वाला, वो एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट हो गया, पेस्टिसाइड बढ़ गया, फर्टिलाइजर्स बढ़ गया, ट्रांसपोर्ट बढ़ गया, माल तैयार होगा उसको मार्केट लेके जाना है। पहले जो किसान नरेगा के काम पे जाता था, आज उसके पास 2-2 व्हीकल है। एक व्हीकल का काम होता है सुबह कमान के बाहर जाने का, वहाँ से लेबर उठा के लाने का, दिन भर काम करवाने का, फिर शाम को उनके घर छोड़ाने का, और उनको छोड़ाने के बाद जो भी उस दिन फल सब्जी निकाली होगी वो उसमें टेम्पो में डालने का और मार्केट लेके जाने का। और एक व्हीकल होता है उसके फैमिली यूज़ के लिए। मतलब ये जो बदलाव है कि जो दूसरों के खेत पे काम पे जाता था, आज वो दूसरे को एम्प्लॉयमेंट दे रहा है। अगर ये पानी का बूंद अच्छी तरह से सब जगह जाएगा तो मेरे को नहीं लगता ये नरेगा की ज़रूरत पड़ेगी।
तो गोवर्धन जी, ये जो आपका WA है वागड़ में, ये तो एक पूरे देश के लिए एक मॉडल है, और ऐसे कुछ WAs हैं जो अच्छे से काम कर रहे हैं। अब हम सेकेंड राउंड में बेसिकली आपसे एक पॉइंट सजेस्ट करने को बोलेंगे कि अगर आपको बोलें कि सरकार को क्या करना चाहिए कि वागड़ जैसे WA कल को 1 लाख ऐसे WAs बने, तो क्या सरकार कर सकती है, उसके बारे में कुछ बोलें, बताइए। हाँ,
मैं सोचा रहा हूँ
नहीं, उल्टा शुरू करते हैं।
तो मैं इस सवाल का जवाब 2 एंगल से देना चाहूँगा। एक, गवर्नमेंट ने क्या करना है, किसान ने क्या करना है, और इन दोनों के बीच आज एक मिडलमैन की ज़रूरत है, और वो है NGO है। हाँ। आज सिचुएशन ऐसी है, रोड के एक तरफ से गवर्नमेंट जा रहा है, दूसरी तरफ से फार्मर जा रहा है। हाँ। और दोनों एक दूसरे की तरफ उंगलियां दिखा रहे हैं। हाँ। तो उनको सही एक दूसरे के पास लाने का काम इस NGO को करना है। पहली बात तो यह है कि ये जो 1 लाख तक की WA बनानी है, तो उसके लिए हमको हमारा डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिंग नेटवर्क जो है वो अच्छा बनाना पड़ेगा। क्योंकि अब महाराष्ट्र में कानून बना है, कानून के तहत हर किसान का वाटर एंटाइटलमेंट तय हो गया है। धीरे धीरे ये प्रोसेस सब पूरे भारत में भी होगी। तो किसान का वाटर एंटाइटलमेंट है उसके ज़मीन के हिसाब से, वो उसको तो पहुंचाना अनिवार्य होना चाहिए, मतलब वो कानून में डालना चाहिए। जैसे शिक्षा के लिए कोई कानून बनाया है, उसी तरह इसके लिए भी पानी होना चाहिए। जैसे अभी हर खेत पूरा पानी मतलब वही है, उसका मीनिंग हो गया। तो इसी तरह का अगर काम हो जाएगा तो लास्ट तक पानी जाएगा, किसान WA बनाने के लिए राजी हो जाएगा। दूसरी बात है कि पॉलिटिकल विल पावर। पानी अब ऐसा बोलता है, जो ताकतवर नेता होता है उसके पीछे पानी जाता है। ये सब जगह देखने को आता है। तो इसके लिए थोड़ा सा एक ब्रेन वॉशिंग भी कह सकते हैं, तो इन लोगों को अभी करना चाहिए। मेरे को तो लगता है कि ठीक है, अब ढेर सारे WAs के लिए ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम करवाते हैं, फार्मर्स के लिए ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम करवाते हैं। तो एक ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम ऐसा होना चाहिए कि उसमें हर स्टेट का सेक्रेटरी, मिनिस्टर उनको इन्वॉल्व करके खुलेआम उनके स्टेट में पानी का कितना अवेलेबिलिटी है, क्या सिचुएशन है, वो क्या कर रहे हैं, इसके अगर खुलेआम चर्चा कहीं अगर किसी सभागार में होगी तो निश्चित उसमें कोई ना कोई बदलाव जरूर आएगा। तीसरी बात यह है कि जैसा सर्व शिक्षा अभियान, टॉयलेट्स बनाने के लिए जो गवर्नमेंट कैंपेन चलाती है उसी तरह का कैंपेन वाटर यूजर एसोसिएशन बनाने के लिए भी चलना चाहिए, ताकि पीपल को उसको जानकारी होनी चाहिए। एक दूसरा एक देखने को सामने ऐसा आया है कि वाटर यूजर एसोसिएशन बनानी है, उसके कौन भागीदार है, तो उनको इकट्ठा करो, उनको ट्रेनिंग दे दो। मगर वो वाटर यूजर एसोसिएशन कहाँ वर्क करने वाली है? गांव में वर्क करने वाली है, तो गांव में पॉलिटिक्स भी है। तो वो सबको नज़र में रखते हुए उस ट्रेनिंग प्रोसेस में गांव के सरपंच जो है, वो जो वार्ड मेंबर है, उनको भी थोड़ा सा इन्वॉल्वमेंट उनकी लेनी चाहिए। तब कहीं जाके, अब आमच्या महाराष्ट्रामध्ये एक मन आहे, पाटील जे सांगेल ते गाव करतं, मतलब गांव का जो चौधरी पाटिल जो है वो जो बोलता है तब सब गांव निकलता है। तो उसी तरह का उसका फ़ायदा गवर्नमेंट ने उठाना चाहिए। उसके बाद जो बात आती है, जो कम्युनिकेशन, सुसंवाद उसको बोलते हैं, मतलब वो इसी फील्ड में नहीं, सब जगह जो भी सार्वजनिक काम है उसमें दिखता है, वो बहुत कम होता जा रहा है। इसलिए करना कुछ चाहते थे, होता कुछ है। इसके लिए मैं एक कहानी बताना चाहूँगा, छोटी सी है। एक लड़के की शादी तय हो गई, उसने कपड़े दे दिए टेलर के पास सिलाने के लिए। टेलर ने आज दे तो कल दे तो करते करते शादी के एक दिन पहले कपड़े दे दिए। लड़के ने पहले देखा पैंट बहुत बड़ी हो गई थी, तो अब क्या किया जाए। उसने सोचा चलो फोल्ड करके पहन लेंगे, शादी हो जाएगी, देखेगा। उसको 2 बहनें थी, दोनों बहनें ने देखा कि अपने भाई के कपड़े बिगड़ गए, कुछ तो कुछ करना चाहिए। रात सब सो गए, बड़ी बहन उठी, उसने नीचे से पैंट काटी, फिर अलमारी में रख दी, सो गई। 2 घंटे बाद छोटी वाली उठी, उसने भी पैंट को काटा, अलमारी में रख दिया, सो गया। सुबह जब वो लड़का पैंट पहना, वो हाफ पैंट बन चुकी। हमारे इधर यही होता जा रहा है, जो भी टैलेंट है वो सब पॉलिसी बनाने में इकट्ठा हो गया है। उसका एग्जीक्यूशन करने के लिए ग्राउंड वाटर पे जो टैलेंट चाहिए वो नहीं है। अब पीडीएन की बात चल रही है, सब जगह देश में पीडीएन बनाने का चल रहा है, मगर पीडीएन बनाने के लिए पाइपलाइन डालने के लिए वो पाइपलाइन कितनी गहरी डालनी है, कितने डायमीटर का वो पाइप डालना है, उसका थिकनेस कितना रखना है, इसके लिए जो नॉलेज चाहिए वो ग्राउंड लेवल पे आज नहीं है। टेंडर निकाला जाता है, वो कॉन्ट्रैक्टर आता है, जेसीबी को वाले को लाता है, दिखाता है यहाँ से वहाँ तक पाइपलाइन डालनी है, ये पाइप है, जेसीबी वाला नाला मारता है, पाइप डाल देता है, मिट्टी गिरवा देता है। इससे वो पीडीएन नहीं जमेगा। क्योंकि एक मैं एग्जांपल बताऊँ, मेरे गांव का ही बताता हूँ। 15 साल पहले मेरे गांव में पीने के पानी की पाइपलाइन डाली, कॉन्ट्रैक्टर काम करके चला गया, और जब पूरा वॉल पानी खोला तो कई जगह पाइपलाइन के ज़मीन से वो पाइप ऊपर आ गए, क्योंकि उसके ऊपर जो प्रेशर आना चाहिए था, जो थिकनेस मेंटेन होनी चाहिए थी, वो नहीं थी। वो सब अब इसमें हो रहा है। इसलिए जिस तरह से पॉलिसी पर बनाने में टैलेंट है, उतने ही लेवल का टैलेंट हम लोगों को ग्राउंड लेवल पे इंट्रोड्यूस करना पड़ेगा कहीं ना कहीं, तब कहीं जाके इसकी ड्यूरेबिलिटी मेंटेन होगी।
थैंक यू गोवर्धन जी। मीना जी, क्विकली यू टॉक्ड अबाउट विमेन लेड एग्रीकल्चर डेवलपमेंट, तो उसके बारे में थोड़ा सा इफ यू कैन एलैबोरेट।
So when we were working with these extension workers of Krishi Mitras, and they were, as I said, 90% to 95% were all women, and we were working with like 2,000 say Krishi Mitras. So we also realized that this whole process of capacity building, like they gaining skills and knowledge, but they were never recognized as resource persons in agriculture, because women are as such never recognized as farmers, you all know. So they were not recognized. But this kind of, when they started taking it ahead with farmers, then demonstrated it, then they got an identity for themselves also, like not only in their home but also in the whole village, that they are the resource persons in agriculture. So that kind of identity they got. And also there is another myth that, women cannot use tools, they cannot use data, they don't know how to interpret data. So this myth was also slowly it was going कि हाँ भाई ये भी यूज़ कर सकते हैं, ये भी बता सकते हैं। पूरे गांव में जब चर्चा हो रही है, वो अच्छा से बता पा रहे हैं कि भाई ये डेफिसिट है, ये सरप्लस है, इस तरह का प्लानिंग होना चाहिए। So that by using those tools and technology they were able to explain. So that myth also slowly it is going away. So one of things is that, but as I said, recognition of women as farmers is not there. So there is also need for a socio-political kind of a reform where, you know, land tenure in the name of women needs to be there. So that kind of a thing also needs to be there.
Thank you. Ashok ji, in the morning also, sorry, not in the morning, in the afternoon, but before our panel, there was discussion on entrepreneurs and enterprises. Irrigation में entrepreneurs और enterprises का क्या potential है, और उसमें PMKSY, does it have any provision for that? If you can talk about that.
Yeah, entrepreneurship का जो है, that is basically, you know, infusion of technology in the otherwise a very conventional field of irrigation. So अभी हम लोग SCADA एक large scale हम लोग उसको promote कर रहे हैं under PMKSY, in which SCADA basically, you know, is a smart distribution of water, जो कि अभी बता रहे थे मोहन जी about, you know, problems in water distribution. They are to some extent because the demands are collected online through a kiosk using mobiles of the farmers, and then that demand is consolidated and then, you know, intelligently distributed in terms of the crops and the requirement and the overall water availability. तो उसके लिए फिर एक उसके साथ इंटीग्रेशन होता है IoTs का, इंटरनेट ऑफ थिंग्स के थ्रू आप सॉइल मॉइस्चर सेंस करके देन यू कैन, यू नो, डू मोर इंटेलिजेंट डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ वाटर, या लेट अस से मिड रेंज IMD predictions on rainfall, because sometimes the canals are, you know, longer. जब पानी वहाँ तक पहुँचना है उस टाइम क्या पता बारिश ही आने की प्रेडिक्शन हो. तो इस तरह के इनपुट्स को जब हम करेंगे तो देर इज़ इनफैक्ट एन एग्जाम्पल, किसान राजा करके एक है बंदा जो कि इन साउथ ही हैज़ बीन डूइंग दिस IoT काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स. ही हैज़ बीन लो कॉस्ट थिंग्स which is, you know, supplying to people, and it has been a very successful model. Similar such activities can be taken up subsequently also for other activities. So there is a scope wherever we have technology infusions, like, you know, precision farming. That is another area in which we can, you know, do this. तो इस तरह के हैं जिसमें entrepreneurship कर सकते हैं हम लोग.
Thank you. Marcella ji, final kind of also the concluding remarks probably for this panel. What does all of this mean for the long-term sustainability of agriculture per se? Not just the jobs and the water security, but agriculture as a livelihood security option. If you can reflect on that, then we can close.
I think this is a big challenge, and it's something we constantly ask ourselves, because we are in a world that is where the farmer is right at the center of all the risks. The risks from the climate perspective, the uncertainty, the rainfall at the wrong times. On the other hand, the risk of the market pushes and pulls, the newer types of varieties, a lot of challenges that are coming, their own survival, the survival of their children. So having this at the center, and yet at the heart of it is, as we said earlier, water management. So coming from that perspective and knowing that so much of our land is rain dependent, and the groundwater resources are not so much. We don't know how much it is. So that is the big challenge, and I would like to state, like one of the women in our villages during a workshop, she said, are we going to make our land like a sieve by drilling so many borewells? What will happen to our water resources? In another event, when we shared with the farmers the quantum of water that was being removed and putting it on the surface, and the quantum of water from 6 villages that was lost in evaporation, they were stunned and they said, what are we leaving our children with? So more and more we are beginning to understand that the groundwater has to be treated very, very carefully. Putting water on the surface is with temperatures that are rising, longer summers, higher summer temperatures, and in drought years, more evaporation taking place, evaporation taking place. We are putting our children and the future of our country at risk. And that is where the whole issue of a very judicious use of water management. We are going in for groundwater. How do we use it judiciously, quantifiably? And that's what we are trying out with our farmers in the villages, so that they understand everything. One more aspect I think it's very important we have to know when we are looking at groundwater resources. When more and more borewells are coming up, the water, we have done a study where we see that the water from the neighboring wells, farmers in these are losing 1 and 2 crops because X farmer and Y farmer have taken bore wells. We are looking at this only in the zone of influence within that area. What we have not assessed is what is the impact of those sub-basal flows on the downstream. We have not been able to assess. So, while we are looking at promotion of groundwater use and particularly of drilling wells, bore wells. Wells is a different structure. Bore wells, we have to be extremely, extremely careful because we are putting our country at risk. And one more point, I'm bringing out some of the things that we have seen. We look at farmers taking wells, even in wells. We were surprised to find out that to secure the water for their farm ponds, the farm ponds, unfortunately, in Maharashtra, have been converted into surface storage tanks, lifting up groundwater. I've heard it happening also in different states. Groundwater is lifted, stored in farm ponds, captured over there, and we have seen farmers drilling bore wells, drilling lateral bore wells, going into neighboring farmers. So the question is, whose water is affected? While we are looking at securing agriculture for farmers, are we looking at the equity issues and all farmers being benefiting from it? Or are we is this approach going to worsen the divide of agriculture? This is coming from studies that we have seen, and it really affects us, and we don't know how to find solutions unless we all work together and be concerned about the future of our country, our food security, our survival.
Thank you. I'm not going to try and summarize this, but if there are any, I don't know if you have time for any audience questions. Otherwise, we can wrap up.
Just one clarification.
Yeah, please.
It's okay, I'm loud enough.
So, we're talking about what I heard, and maybe I might have missed. So, are we only talking about agriculture, or are we talking about agriculture inclusive in terms of horticulture and other things? So, it's exclusively agriculture, or it is flori and horti?
I think that the focus is on more wider definition of
then flori and horti is again offering you income and opportunities.
Yes, I think we have to shift towards higher value agriculture, which is an opportunity that will be offered by not only horticulture but also with animal husbandry, which is a growing protein economy.
Yeah. It's with animal husbandry, it's with the fodder, it's with flori. It is also with the riverine systems and the fish over there. That's all a part of the system.
Okay, I think we can. Yes, go on.
I think I have heard about this water budgeting from a number of our speakers. So I have only one learning question: that how farmer knows about the available water he or she is having in her village underground. How do they do a kind of a rough, at least some estimates, what you do, so that people can estimate, I have that much surface water which is visible, and I have this much invisible resources. This is how I do estimate, and I can plan accordingly. Yeah.
I think the short answer to that is that we only look at dynamic groundwater. So whatever natural recharge is available every year, that is treated as usable, and we try not to touch the static groundwater. So we don't have to measure it. We only say, okay, whatever is the natural recharge or artificial recharge that is going to happen every year. That is the available water for pumping.
And
Not
the
just
rainfall
Yes.
there's the farmers collect also rainfall, and they look at the groundwater levels. They measure groundwater levels at different levels, so they have an estimate of what it is together with the rainfall.
He's my batchmate. That's why he asked the question. Because I asked the question.
Okay, one more. Quick one.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you so much for this panel discussion. My name is Igansha and I work as a program associate at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. So very recently, I led a study at the behest of Government of India where we did a rapid assessment of Atal Bhujal Yojana in the state of Rajasthan. So Atal Bhujal Yojana has a very similar inkling whereby it's trying to converge mandates and works of 7 ministries at least. And it also mandates doing water budgeting and water accounting, and then building in demand and supply side interventions for the upcoming 4 to 5 years, of course, subjected to annual revisions of it. So, ma'am, in my experience, and sirs, what I saw was that the structure functions a certain way till the time there's a government impetus. But for Atal Bhujal Yojana, they have hired third-party agencies within the government system to help them implement it. But there are still many bottlenecks while the system is still in place. And now if the system exits, it's a pretty dark question to ponder. How is this whole thing going to work? At every level, whether you talk of it coming as a politics involvement right at the Gram Panchayat level. So one is you generate data, but one is you disseminate it. And I believe there is politics in both ends of it. And then, of course, in how you use and interpret it further. So in your experience of working with the community, especially coming from a water budgeting and maybe a water accounting angle, ma'am, how do you see the sustainability of it once you exit the system?
Yeah, you want to answer?
Yeah.
What we do is we know that after the project period, it will stop. So from our side, from time to time, which doesn't take too much of a cost, just go and inquire from the people. How is it? What is happening? So just keep in touch so that they can continue the work. And we find that is important because simultaneously a lot of other messages come in, a lot of different ideas come in, and without realizing it, people jump in for the newer methodologies. This is a challenge and it is continuous. So we feel that there's a need to continue, just keep in touch without having to do the regular interventions that were done earlier.
The other thing that I would like to add is that when we are capacitating the government functionaries itself, so it is being integrated in the system also. So once they are capacitated, they are taking it ahead with the farmers and doing touch base regarding what's happening, what's not happening. It is not a project if you integrate it itself in the system. So that's one of the things that then it becomes, I would say, a bit.
I think that one overarching reflection from the experience, but also for Atal Bhujal, is that participatory groundwater management is not a one-shot exercise.
Yes.
You cannot do it for a period of 2 years and then get out. It's an ongoing process, and then somebody has to be willing to invest. Not only participatory groundwater management, but even WUS. You cannot just go and do a 3-year project and then get out and then assume that the WUS will keep working forever. You have to constantly invest in it. So that's a conclusion for Argyam as well. So with that, I'd like to thank all the panelists for their insights.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful message. If you want sustainability, we have to invest in the institutions and continuity of it. So we are now at the end of our day's session. I would like to invite Mr. Anuj Sharma for the closing remarks and vote of thanks.
I generally believe saying everyone can hear me, and I just want to share the predicament. As a very studious student, I was sitting in the front row and taking notes all day long. And now when I come here, I know why we needed this session, right? Because in India, when we speak about livelihoods and we don't talk about intersectionality with water, you get an empty room. We need to continue to do it again and again, and more of so. Still, I would say there are 4 things I just wanted to narrate to you guys to keep it personal and why this is important to us at Argyam. So one of our trustees said, saying, oh, you know what? There's this Livelihood India Summit happens. Why don't you guys think of doing a water track? And this was hardly a month's time to prepare and try and think about it. So I just, because this is vote of thanks, I wanted to start with thanking him. That's number 1. Thanking Access team to say, okay, yes, guys, we need water track, because we've been doing compendiums where we say, oh, for the rural livelihood, water security is super important, but we haven't specifically called it out. So we need a water track. So we said, okay, so let's sort of live up to the challenge, try and bring people together who we believe have something to say, to share, and we all can learn from each other. The third set of thanks I want to give to all of you, the participants, to the panelists and everyone, because honestly, while this was, there was a paucity of time in trying to make it happen. What I just realized today, regardless of how many people were there in the room, I could learn a lot from what each one of you said, right? I mean, I could go on because I do have my notes. Don't challenge me on that, right? You'll get delayed. But then, fourthly, I also want to, thank all the entire team, which is actually managing the logistics, and the Argyam team for making this happen. So thank you all. And to me, this was a learning exercise. I really believe we can continue to push the agenda of saying, look, water has intersectionality with almost every subject. You talk about health, you talk about livelihoods. And if we don't keep paying enough attention to water security, like Marcella ji said, a couple of others also said, the future is then not going to look very bright, right? So it's our responsibility, it's upon us. So thank you. Thanks again for coming and participating. Thanks a lot.